Welcome to the New South Wales Government's Business Connect webcast on business disruption. My name is Steve Waite, a Business Connect advisor and CEO of the Business Centre. Business Connect is a dedicated program funded by the New South Wales Government and delivered through a network of independent service providers to help you start or grow your small business. Use of smart technology from software, apps and platforms through to devices and artificial intelligence are now all prevalent across the New South Wales economy, but not just in large corporates, but also in small businesses. So today we'd like to look at this from that perspective of small business owners and how you can adapt beyond COVID-19 through the use of technology and digital platforms. To help us navigate through this technology in small business, we have joining us today our guest Rob Buck, founder and managing director of Diamond IT. Great to see you. Thanks for being here today, Rob. We appreciate it. Now, Diamond IT helps organisations succeed in delivering innovative technology solutions and customer experiences. It was established in 1996. Diamond IT is now a multi-award winning company that has been recognised as one of the top 10 managed service providers in Australia, with offices in Newcastle and Sydney. Diamond IT has a dynamic and passionate team of over 40 staff. We will, in our discussion with Rob, hopefully leave you with some practical steps on how to best adapt and use technology in your business, and to do so in a way that helps sustain, improve and grow your business. Now, Rob founded, as I said, Diamond IT in the mid-90s, and has since, as Managing Director, guided the organisation by becoming a leading technology solutions provider. This period of time has seen enormous advancement in technology, as many of us would know, which has required him to lead Diamond IT through a consistently changing environment. And how more could we have a period of change than this one? So whilst building success, Rob has also completed an MBA with merit and is a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. During this time, he's also performed non-executive roles within the social justice sector. In 2017, Robert was appointed as director to the board of the Samaritans Foundation. So Rob, time for you to start talking with us and having this conversation, and thanks for the time we spent together prior to this, just working our way through some of the issues for small business owners. The first question we always ask in these webcasts is, how has this whole thing been for you? What has it been like, the ups and the downs of it? Where are you at, and how have you dealt with it, and what sort of things have happened?
It's unbelievable, I think, both from a personal level and a business level, and I sort of reflect back on, 6 months ago when it really hit.
Yeah.
And I remember having a coffee with someone, and that was when the toilet paper crisis was on. And
Yes.
They were saying, oh, how's it affecting you? And we're like, oh, it's a bit difficult to get some stock, but not really. And I remember sending a person a message about 2 weeks later and saying, can you believe we're laughing about this 1 minute, and 2 weeks later we couldn't have that coffee in the first place because we were in lockdown. But for us, it was an interesting period because we'd just moved and we'd acquired our premises at Warrabrook, and we had quite a tight time frame for that move and the fit out.
Yeah.
And it almost has no resonance now to say this, but I was really stressed because there was 2 days where we couldn't have anyone in the office during the move and the fit out.
Yeah.
And everyone was working at home.
Yeah.
And I was stressing about that. Not from a technology point of view, but just the upheaval of it.
Yeah.
And you get no empathy to say that now because the whole world's been working at home since. But we finally got the fit out, got everyone in, sitting at a seat, and 2 days later we had to send them all home.
Oh my God.
It's been like that ever since. But I think one thing that I'll remember for a long time is sitting in my business partner's office with literally no furniture in it, with our management team sitting on the floor for 2 hours just trying to figure it all out. And I'm not ashamed to say probably the first 3 weeks I was just mind blown by the whole thing and really stressing about it. And then you just get to a point where you realise, okay, we've just got to get into this.
Have to make the adjustment.
I think now is kind of almost like an echo of that from 6 months ago, with a lot of the government stimulus either backing off or completely or partially, and that uncertainty of what's this going to look like again now. We've sort of been in this little bit of a bubble for 6 months.
So in regard to, and this is one of the things we spoke about, and I've got some of our notes that we put together. So you said also that you had that specific issue of having to move sites, which would have been a nightmare, I guess, in that environment, as you said. But you also said, just in regard to the way you focused around customers and your approach to that. So how did it affect that part of your business?
Yeah, well, it was, the biggest effect, I think, for us was two things. Firstly, we help people under a fixed price model, and we had support loads in one of those first 3 or 4 weeks that were up 87%. So for the first month, our loads were up around 65%. And we'd actually had a couple of new starters. There were people that didn't make it into the office for 4 or 5 months. So onboarding someone when you've never met them, at least face to face, and the fact that you're also completely consumed by the decision-making process.
Yes.
So we had I had a new PA start for me, and about 3 weeks after, so have you got anything for me to do? And I'm like, I'm so sorry, So, that was just an incredible upheaval, and I was very concerned about the impact it would have on customers. But what I found, speaking to a lot of our customers during that time, is they were just really empathetic about it. They were going through the same thing.
Yes.
They understood what was happening, and I think I saw a few things during that period that was really quite heartwarming to see how people responded to very difficult situations.
I'd agree. I think a lot of the people that we've spoken with have said that sort of spirit of we are all in this together, along the whole supply chain or across a whole sector.
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so we've got some questions to go on to which you and I developed, and I guess the questions we're about to lead into are things like this: the challenges around IT. You're going to give us some insights around that now, making decisions around IT as a small business owner. And we got to that idea of addressing the gaps. Once you've got a sense of the challenges, what the gaps are, the opportunities you and I spoke about. There are indeed opportunities from this time as well. The specific area which you've broken down to us really well in regard to the phenomena of working from home, and then concurrent with that, the issue of staff performance and productivity and attendance and safety, all those elements of working from home and how technology can play a part from all of these. So let's get to the first question, and this is the challenge of IT questions. So you've broken this up into two specific areas which you're going to talk on more, but maybe just generally we'll just set this up. So what are the greatest challenges facing small businesses right now, in your view, when it comes to IT, both now and travelling through this COVID journey? So what are they generally, and then we'll take a dive into those two areas that you spoke of.
I think, and I like the fact that you say from a technology point of view, because I feel almost guilty talking about this when they've got such much bigger challenges economically. But from a technology point of view, I think it's productivity and communication, and then cybersecurity. Right. So from a productivity point of view, it really depends on what technology they had in place before this. So across our customer base, we had people who've told me this was seamless. They already had the technology in place to work from home, and that was how they already worked.
Do you mind if I just quickly ask a question, and we'll keep going? Yep. So was that a case of them having technology and systems in place that were working essentially probably below their capacity because people weren't using all of their capabilities, and this switched that on?
I would say everyone. I would say everyone works differently. Okay. So this particular organisation, it was pretty much how they work. They were just a very mobile organisation, and I remember them being really thankful for us putting that technology in. It was nice to hear that, but I said, well, look, at the end of the day, you're the ones who invested in this technology. So, but certainly. There's always going to be varying degrees of interest in technology across different businesses, partly because of just the way they see technology and partly because of their needs. So, but if you've got the technology in place already, then it was going to be a lot easier to do. Yeah. The second part is, are they using it? And is it part of their culture? And have their people been trained appropriately to work with this technology? Yeah. A lot of people, with the way licensing works these days, already have Microsoft Teams. They're already paying for that. They've already got SharePoint Online. They're just not necessarily actually using it. Yeah. So from that perspective, I think communications, I know a lot of, I wouldn't say a high percentage, but a lot of organisations I've spoken to in the last 6 months, you ask to speak to someone, they say, I can't transfer the call to home. So technology's been around for a long time that's been able to allow that to happen.
Yeah.
And I personally think right now the last thing you want to be doing is potentially losing revenue over the fact that you know, customers can't get to speak to someone. So both that productivity and communication really a key thing.
So when you were talking about the uplift in calls and inquiries that you were getting at that, you know, that sort of period when it hit, what were people calling up to ask for help with?
Yeah, I guess I probably should have clarified that. Really, it was just a massive move to home. So whether or not they had that technology, I guess if someone does something 100 things in technology, there's a certain percentage chance it's going to go wrong. And so when you just have literally thousands of people across our customer base that we're supporting going to home, there's going to be problems. So we just had that huge amount of calls coming in for that.
Okay. And then the cybersecurity piece. So tell us a bit about the challenge of that at this time.
It's a big challenge, and it also worries me that I think a lot of business people, understandably, don't have the mind share to be thinking about that right now. They've got a lot of things on their plate. Cybersecurity is a very big risk, and I think that even people outside of the technology sector are well aware of that. But when you move to home, it just changes the dynamic. So let's say in the office space, there's a potentially a multi-$1,000 router sitting in the corner that's got great cybersecurity, and everyone's sitting behind that. All of the equipment is has been purchased by the organisation, and they've got some control over it. Then you move home, and suddenly you're relying on that person's internet connection when they're connecting to your servers, and everyone's differently. If they're in a pure cloud environment, it's going to be different. But generally, people have got to be conscious of the fact that that's how it is now. And when you bring the home equipment into your network, it's going to increase risk. And cyber, we'd like to think the cyber criminals would sort of go, well, look, these guys are dealing with too much. We're not going to attack them right now. But guess what? They don't think that way. And I believe the FBI has come out and said that cyber attacks are up 300%.
Because there's many more vulnerabilities. So typically, and we had a good conversation that, as you said, there are many solutions, commercial solutions and platforms to resolve some of the things we're about to speak about. So we're not going to talk about specific vendors per se, but there are many ways, or there are many software and hardware solutions to help people with this shift to home and maintain cybersecurity, and they probably need to speak to their IT expert to help them with that. So what types of things, at a general sense, do you mean?
Yeah, I think generally I would say, look, a huge percentage of people are using the Zooms and the Microsoft Teams now, and they're doing that because I think the absolute most jarring aspect of this is just being able to communicate with people. So they've been forced into that. But there's other technologies that can help them work more productively, and I think we'll talk later about sort of how to monitor performance. And they definitely need to be talking to their experts about that, and asking them not so much for a technical solution, but this is my business problem. Talk to them in that perspective. I know that when I'm talking to customers, sometimes they find it hard to talk to the techie and elevate beyond tech. And I think a lot of IT businesses are prepared to have that business conversation with them. And that's where we can get the technology to actually fix that rather than the other way around.
That's a good insight, because it would be the same in regard to whatever financial systems you have in place, or marketing systems, or HR systems. You don't need to define the speciality of it. You need to define the specificity of the problem for that particular part of your business, don't you? So it's a good point.
Yeah, I think, sometimes, and it's a bit of a quirky example, frankly, but I sometimes say to people, do you have a pen department? And they always have a kind of a slightly taken aback response. And I say, well, look, you use pens, don't you? So you should have a pen department. And that's kind of how people see IT at the moment. It really is a tool that people are using right through everything they do. And they shouldn't have that mindset of, okay, we've got to tick that box and have IT in good shape. It should be, what is required for the business, and then flip that on its head.
From there. Okay, we're going to go on to the next question. We just got one coming through live, so I'll just have a look at that. All right, Jerry asks, how do I go about doing a tech audit in my business? I want to see if I can streamline my business and don't know where to start, operations or CX. So is there any way or any suggestions you've got around doing a tech audit?
Yeah, well, look, you know, depending on the organisation, they'll either have those skills either in or out.
Yeah.
So I think the key I would recommend to Jerry is that if you ask a technical person to do an audit, they're going to be looking at things from a very technical perspective. So they're going to spec out exactly what you've got.
Yeah.
I think give them guidance into what you're trying to achieve so they can focus on certain areas, say, for example, cybersecurity.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's you need better business information.
Yeah.
So an audit in its traditional form is going to tell you exactly what's in the network.
Yeah.
And chances are you're going to get 10 to 15 pages of highly technical stuff.
Doesn't address what your needs are.
I think the key is, and you know, there was a note there about CX. So just to ensure you're guiding that person. I mean, ideally using a consultant. It depends on the organisation whether they can afford to engage someone like that. But a consultant who's going to come at it from that business point of view, and you know, if they're looking at customer experience, then you know, literally talking to some of your customers, you know, talking to people at the coalface. You know, again, this is where I'm saying that IT businesses can go beyond that tech and start to bring that in. So that's probably what.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers the question.
All right, we'll come back to some of those other questions lately. So I just want to get on to our next question, which I've called the IT decision-making question. So we started talking about some specific areas around challenges, but this question is more about what sort of decisions do business leaders need to make at this time in regard to that? So that, you know, information noise, you know, customer life threatening versus cyber, freaking out versus figuring out, these sorts of things. So give us a sense of that.
Look, I think decision making, if you and I were going to write a textbook or an e-book on decision making, we'd like to think that there was plenty of data available and there was certainty of certain outcomes and that we had a decent time frame to make that decision and that we weren't under pressure. You know?
Yes.
But we've got none of that right now.
No.
And I think, you know, if we're talking again specific to IT and decisions about what they need to do, I think there's a positive there because the things that they might get pushed into doing right now are things that are going to help them in the future. So it's never going to be a bad thing for them to be able to transfer a call to one of their staff at home. You know, that's not going to go away. It's not like I'm not sure if there's a great example, but let's say that we were concerned about a drought and we built 3 extra dams at significant cost, and maybe it's not a perfect example because maybe we need those dams, but let's say we didn't need those dams. You've just put that investment into something that after that drought you actually don't need anymore. I would say it's a broad brushstroke, but I would say most things that are happening in technology aren't sunk costs. They're things that, and I'm talking specific to this pandemic and the situation we're in right now, where people need to be able to have that cybersecurity to work from home. They need to be able to work from home productively, or frankly work from anywhere.
That's a really good way to look at it. It's got this sort of latency in it, hasn't it?
I don't think it's ever going to be a bad thing. It's not going to be a dam we don't need. You know, it's just a reality that those things are going to be helpful in what we call this new normal.
I like what you said there, because when we spoke about this, you sort of said, you know, that so that they can be reluctant to invest when at a time when cash flow might be low. But as you said, the benefit of this could be very much an ongoing benefit. So they need to see it in the medium and the long term in regard to its benefit. You also spoke here when we spoke about this question about many businesses can't see how they can improve through technology or what technology to use. So helping people at the moment, understanding technology's capability for their problems. What sort of insights have you got there?
I think for us, the main thing helping people is, it's almost like anything you do in strategy. Where are you now? Where would you like to be? How are we going to get there? So a lot of it's going to depend on what they have in place right now, and you know what business outcomes they're going to try to to achieve.
Yeah.
I think in some aspects of technology, certain things we can implement quicker than other things. So internet connections at times, anyone who's connected to the NBN over the last few years probably have a bit of an idea that some things just simply take time. So I think for us, it's just a matter of talking to the customer, helping them understand what can be done quickly, or at least what can be done inside that time frame, and what are the gaps. So it's probably not dissimilar to most situations. It's just that time frames have changed.
So one of the hesitancies often with an investment in technology, whether it be software or hardware, typically is, and I'd like to get your insight into this, typically is, oh, well, if I buy this now, I should wait because there'll be another version, or that quandary. So what's that like now? Is that still a thing?
It's kind of got me smiling a little bit because, I've been in this sector for a long time, and it probably used to happen a lot more when hardware was really completely insufficient for what we were using it for. And I remember when what was called Pentium technology came out and showing people that no matter how fast they typed, it could actually keep up with them. This stuff doesn't really, it's not really there anymore. But I still, reflect on conversations I've had even in the last month, where people just look at it, they need to look at it as a cycle. So, if they're in a situation where they need on-premise infrastructure versus cloud, and in that case, it's really not relevant to cloud, but some organisations have to be on-prem. It could be a software application they're using. Some people just frankly aren't comfortable with cloud environment. Just look at it as a cycle. So, it's probably pretty aggressive to roll that equipment every 3 years. 4 years is probably pretty standard. 5 starts to become a little bit long in the tooth. So even if you don't finance it and it's a capital outlay, they really should look at it as a monthly amount that they're going to depreciate it over that time.
So with your, the models that are available in the industry, is that sort of reflected on the way that services are now often offered? That it's not an upfront capital cost. It is amortised through a programmed approach. Is that sort of typically how things are delivered in the industry? Yeah,
well, I think cloud certainly fits that. But if we talk specifically about on-prem again, in that situation, like, okay, I want to wait another year because something faster will be coming. Well, something's always coming that's faster. And if you're now lugging equipment that's causing a lot more problems and productivity issues, it might sound sort of like I've got incentive to advise people to do it quickly, but we have we've got the stats, and it marries up with everything that happens in the industry. Once you go past 4 or 5 years for equipment, you absolutely are going to have more problems, and there's going to be more risk, and you're basically paying more for it.
And I guess the people in the industry are very much, self-educating and keeping abreast of where things are coming, because you would be wanting to see things that are tested, that can deliver on the existing capability and add value in some way. So you're always looking ahead anyway, I'd imagine, with the people that provide this equipment, provide these software solutions to you.
Yeah, I think it's part of what we do is kind of cost centre stuff that people don't really want to spend money on, which is fair enough. And frankly, I don't either. I mean, we don't necessarily get it much cheaper than our customers do, and I don't like spending thousands of dollars, and in our case more than that, on servers every 4 or 5 years either. But then there's the investment side and the profit centre stuff, like if we go to Jerry's question about customer experience, where you can actually impact a business and take it forward. So they're two different conversations. There's really the kind of, okay, we've got 10 computers and we've got a server. It's going to have to be rolled every so often. We've just got to deal with that.
Build it in.
That's just got to happen. And no one gets too excited about that conversation. But you can then look at ways of serving your customers better and understanding your customers better.
Okay, I've just got a quick question here. So Angelina asks, our team is thinking of consolidating all of our tech platforms to Microsoft Teams. We currently use Zoom, Slack and Asana. Is Teams all it's cracked up to be? We may or may not answer that question because we did talk about some of that stuff we might talk about offline.
I'm happy to just comment generally on it.
Okay.
I mean, just talk to your experts about the, what it's going to cover. I'm personally a fan of having as many eggs in one basket. So just generically, if I'm advising people on what to do with software, there's two broad approaches. You can try to go for a best of breed in each, or something with a wider footprint. And both have got their advantages. I generally lean to have something with a wider footprint, and in this case, Teams does have that wider footprint. And over time, what I found with Microsoft, who literally spend billions of dollars a year on R&D, is they might have a product that's not spectacular here, but a lot of people judge software when they buy it on where it is right now. You're probably going to live with this for 5 to 10 years, and
that's
maybe
a good
more.
point.
You've got to look at, probably the key thing I think people need to look at is they always look at the functionality, but rarely look at the technology behind it and the financial strength of the organisation that they're working with. Because where this tech is now compared to where it's going to be is going to be based on how much that organisation's investing in it. And in the case of Microsoft, I can say that that's a lot more money than almost everyone else.
A bit more horsepower behind it. Okay. This next question is about, if we can dwell a little bit further here, what more can businesses can they do now, and how have you been helping them at this particular point? So what can they do now, and in terms of the gaps, and how can you help them?
Yeah, I think it's probably almost a question of what we were doing a few months back, and the fact that people were just forced into this change. But now I think it just comes down to as the dust is settling. Okay, we've discovered now that, let's use the example of Teams, that we had this piece of software we were already paying for as part of our subscription, and now we're using it, and I think a lot of people have enjoyed that. Well, what else have we got that potentially could be providing productivity gains? So have a chat to your IT experts about what else have I got that I could be using.
So a bit like a question we had earlier about an audit or taking stock. Really, this may well be an opportunity to really talk to your IT expert to say, well, I know better now how this particular situation or disruption has affected me. Can you help me understand what capability I've got?
Yeah, and that would be a good thing to be part of the audit, to look at that. I think, if I'd gone to the market and said, look, and frankly we were, Teams is a good situation, then even though they own it, there's that, there's still a buy-in that's got to happen, and there's that culture shift. And around Teams and Zoom, everyone just got forced there. You mentioned me being on the board of a not-for-profit. All of our board meetings have been on Teams since the pandemic. What people haven't necessarily been forced to do is another thing that I think they could be doing a lot better is with something like a product that sits alongside Teams as SharePoint Online, where they can get at their documents from everywhere. This is not something that people have been pushed into, but they're probably thinking, well, I need that file that I've left at the office, or it's on my laptop, or what version of this file are we working on? These things happen to people all the time. The pandemic's not forcing them there, but it's giving them a little bit of an idea of the downsides of being in that environment. That exact same thing can be done as well, and I think that's what people really hopefully get out of this. The most positive thing is being able to work from anywhere. For me, we've been using this tech for longer than I'd like to admit. I was using, I started computer engineering in the early 90s, and I was talking to people in America over computers and trying to explain it to people and email and things, and I remember them just looking at it, they had no reference point for it, and now it's just, this is what we do. So I think the key is just to go, well, look, what else can we do better? Even if we're not forced there.
I think you made a good point about this dispersion and this disconnectivity and the loss of sort of uniformity in one place at one time. This is not going away, you know, in terms of switching calls, working on files at different times in different places with different people, and that SharePoint, as you say, has been sitting there somewhat underutilised.
A lot of people are paying for it.
Yeah,
You know, it's part of the subscription.
Yeah.
The main thing they want to get at is, and this is obviously a Microsoft platform, but yeah, they want to get their email through Outlook, and they want to be able to use Word and Excel.
Yeah.
But they've actually got all this other stuff that's kind of coming along with that. And it's making it so much easier to work in, you know.
Can I indulge a little time here, just for you, because you've thrown that word out a couple of times. Some of us know what SharePoint is conceptually.
Okay.
Some of us don't. You say it comes along, I don't know what that is, I'll press that button.
Yep.
Can you have a go for us to share with people that are tuning in? What is SharePoint?
Its primary role is document management, and the IT industry uses that to mean a structured way to keep all of your files. So, you know, often what people will do is they need to use that document and they might just save it on their computer. But there might be other people in the organisation that need access to that document. And let's look at the example of a procedure, for example. So someone's got written a procedure for something that people need to do on a regular occasion, and a new person comes in and let's say they print that procedure out and they make their own notes on it, and they effectively improve that procedure, but it's all sitting on a piece of paper. Or they copy it onto their local computer and they play around with it. Well, in a document management environment, it's centralised, and there's a lot to this, but they, you know, you can set it up so any management can approve changes. They can have changes proposed to managers, and they go, yeah, I think that's right, and then now everyone can see that document. You can have 3 people working out of the same document at the same time. That's different to what we call the file system, where they've just got it all sort of stacked up in either on their computer or on a server somewhere, where they actually can't do these things. So it's been sitting there the whole time for many people in their licence. And they just need to start using it. SharePoint, you'd need probably a bit of guidance. Some more technically proficient people would be able to sort of kick it off themselves.
And as you say, probably come to the IT person with the problem that you've got, which is I've got staff working on documents, or I want to have a safety plan that I need everyone to access as it evolves with differences in regulation or phases of the pandemic. But it does that. It sort of addresses that whole issue of communication, and I guess it also addresses security.
Absolutely. So I think one of the things that happens with cloud is, and certainly people are more comfortable. You know, I think I said the other day, like we used to say, the future is cloudy because you know, it's where it was going, and a lot of people were a bit confused by it. But look, the security that Microsoft can put through their data centres, both physical and cyber security, is more than you could ever do yourself.
Okay, so at the very least, if you switch across to SharePoint, you're going to be able to put a lot more robust protection and access. You're going to be able to control both of those elements. And look, again, like sometimes it's the perception that it's not going to be as safe there, but we can, when I say we, the sector can back it up and take a lot of that out of your hands. Okay, we've got a question before we move on. We're getting close towards our last questions, but we've got a good question here, and as much as you're able to, it could be some of the horror stories that you've heard, but where are the main risks for small businesses regarding cybersecurity? And have you got any, without naming names, any examples of where things have gone horribly wrong because of poor cybersecurity?
Unbelievably, and I think, look, the first thing I think they need to do, especially if they've got a turnover of over 3 million, is understand the legislation around this now. Because in early 2018, governments around the world, including ours, decided to put more onus on the business in terms of people's information and privacy. And so I think the key thing I think people really need to understand is, because I've heard plenty of people say, why would they go after me? And there's 2 parts to that. The first one is they're digitally door knocking. They're not necessarily coming after your organisation. There's these things called bots that are out there, and they're just basically knocking on doors, and when they find one that's got a crack open, they go in there. The whole thing's automated. They're not attacking you.
Yeah.
The second thing is, well, maybe they are attacking you.
Yeah.
And that started to happen more and more, where if they can get inside your organisation, they're watching emails.
Yeah.
They're watching how you speak, the way that you communicate, and they're keeping an eye on what's happening with finances, and then they're looking at payment cycles, and suddenly they're directing a payment to another bank account. And by the way, this has changed. This details have changed, and they're actually having a conversation. Maybe the scariest thing is often this is happening. It's not even in your organisation. It's someone else has got this cyber attack, and they're the ones sending you saying, "Oh, can you change the bank details on this?" This literally happens all the time. So I think the other thing is, everyone thinks it's a technology problem, but 65% of attacks, above 65% of attacks, are now directed at the user. Because ransomware, which is probably not as getting as much attention as it previously was in the last few years, where they encrypt and put a password on all your files, and then you have to pay a ransom to get it back. Well, basically, if you've got a spreadsheet that's got some confidential information and you would like to encrypt and put a password on that, you can do that. And as an IT provider, I'm not going to stop you doing that. So we can't, well, we've got ways that we do actually stop this, but for a lot of businesses out there, they're basically using the user they've got permission to encrypt all these files. So the key is to be, I think that they've got to understand, I think definitely get a bit of an idea of what's going on with notifiable data breach legislation. Because I've been in boardrooms in the last few months where people have, there was a lot of fuss made about this a few years ago, but it's kind of come off the ball, and they don't realise that there is literally fines and for
criminal,
both permanent,
and corporate risk.
So I think the risks are, in terms of functionally, it's the ransomware still out there, payment diversions out there. I've heard a story of literally in the millions that happened. I've seen it in the order of $50,000.
So people are getting inside the internal conversations around invoicing. So they're kind of in a shadow land, sort of mimicking people inside the organisation talking to each other.
And that's why you need to actually jump on the phone. If someone changes bank details, jump on the phone. Don't ring the number on the on the email. Make sure you know who you're calling and say, "Did you mean to do this?" Because again, that attack might not have even happened inside your organisation.
Ah, right. Okay.
I'm just telling you to redirect this 50K payment.
All right, look, we're getting towards the end of our time. As usual, we sometimes run out, but I want to get one more question in before and I know you've got some top tips for us, which you put together. We're going to put those in the notes for this webcast. But we've got another question here, which I think a good one for us to end on, and one we spoke about, about this upside of this as well. So, is there an opportunity for small businesses right now to improve through technology? And you gave me some answers here around the pandemic and Zoom, and also about percentage increases in Teams, etc., and Zoom uptake. And so, what are the opportunities?
Yeah, I think some of it aligns to stuff we've spoken about already, and that is that, look, they've probably got some tech in there that they could be using, and it's really about, I think it's probably about, there's so much going on in their minds right now, but once the dust settles, talking to your experts, what can we do better, what have we got access to? I think one thing in terms of the mobile workforce is a term that we use in the industry called business intelligence. And business intelligence is really about giving people dashboards and analytical information that helps them see where they are in their business. So when we look at, when I have that type of conversation with people, I've got all my financial reports, but do you have dashboards that show what your customer satisfaction levels are month by month? And this is the sort of thing we do. I can look at different technicians and see where it all is. So that's business intelligence, surfacing this information that might not necessarily be buried in your financial systems, and comparing it to other data as well, which is really powerful.
Well, I use in Microsoft, I use the analytics just for my weekly report, just to see where my time is being used, and I find that really useful. And collaboration time, it can give you that, working with others, who have you worked with most, that type of thing. I find that really useful.
Yeah, and that's part of that's probably a whole different can of worms for artificial intelligence, which is starting to come through now as well.
Well, I'd like to thank you. I'm going to close now. We really appreciate your insights, and I like the way that you essentially made a really powerful observation that IT is another part of the business, and that you should probably look at the problem, not the IT, and work your way back from that, and then look at your capacity and look at your gaps, and then make some decisions around it.
That's right, we don't have a pen department.
No pen department. I love that one. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Rob. I'm just going to cut out. Okay, it's time for me to wrap this webcast. We'd like to thank Rob once again for sharing his insights and providing some tips and potential strategies that people can use and begin to adopt and to put in place for their IT and their business. Now, if anyone would like to make contact with Rob, please contact us and we'll send through your details and inquiry to Rob and his team. We'd like to again thank and recommend the Business Connect program, which is dedicated and funded by the New South Wales Government and delivered through a network of independent service providers to help you grow your small business. If you want a business advisory session subsidised by the New South Wales Government under the Business Connect program, call 1300 134 359 or email connect@treasury.nsw.gov.au. It leads me once again to thank the amazing team from Forwardtronics who provide all of our webcast technology and production, and we're very happy to pass on their details to anyone that reaches out to us in the area of webcasting. Thank you for joining me again, and thank you once again, Rob, and we'll say goodbye for today's webcast. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.